Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to try to unpack something pretty heavy. It's a deep dive into a really tragic series of events that happened just a little over a year ago on January 21st, 2024. And this all took place in and around Joliet, Illinois.
Yeah, quite a bit to unpack, I'd say.
Definitely. So to do this deep dive, we've gone ahead and gathered information from a bunch of different sources. News articles, obviously, a Wikipedia entry, the works, right?
Definitely a multi-source approach.
Absolutely. And, these sources really paint a picture of just a devastating and really complex sequence of shootings that ultimately resulted in, multiple deaths and a huge investigation, which, makes sense given the scale of things.
Absolutely.
At the center of this whole thing is, of course, Romeo Alexander Nance. He's the one that the authorities identified as the perpetrator.
Right.
But it's not just about him, right? I mean, we need to understand the victims in this whole thing, too, and, what actually happened. Like, what was the timeline? So, really, our mission today is pretty straightforward. We just want to piece together, like, what happened when. We want to identify everybody that was involved, and we want to grasp, like, what happened immediately after, the immediate aftermath.
Okay.
And we're going to stick to the facts here. We're not going to speculate about motives or anything like that. We're just going to work with the information that's right in front of us. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so jumping right in. The whole thing starts in Joliet on, like we said, January 21st, about 4:15 p.m. Central Standard Time over on Davis Street.
Okay.
Or real evening, right?
Right.
And the first reports that came out, they basically described this encounter where Nance is driving along, right? And he approaches this 42-year-old man who's taking stuff out of his vehicle.
Okay.
And they have, like, a really short conversation, like just a brief exchange. Nance drives away. But then, and this is the crazy part, he comes back and shoots the guy in the leg.
Wow.
Right? And then he just leaves again.
So, I mean, that short exchange, though, you said brief. Yeah.
Yeah. Super quick.
It kind of suggests that this, it wasn't just some totally random act.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, our sources don't tell us exactly what they said to each other or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, it kind of makes you think that maybe they knew each other from before or something happened right there that set him off.
I know, it's so strange.
Right.
And then, get this, just 10 minutes later, the Will County Sheriff's Office gets a call about something going on at the Pheasant Run Apartments complex in Preston Heights.
Okay.
And that's where they found 28-year-old Toyosi Bakare.
Okay.
And he had been shot in the head.
Oh, wow.
They took him to the hospital, but he died from his injuries.
Man.
And here's the thing that's really strange about Toyosi Bakare. Of all the victims, he's the only one who wasn't a blood relative of Nance's.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird, right? But the police did say that they think there was some kind of connection between the two of them.
Okay.
They didn't say what it was, though. So, it's a bit of a mystery there.
Definitely.
So at this point, investigators are starting to put the pieces together. They're using surveillance footage, which was a big help, and they're able to identify Nance and his vehicle.
Okay.
And this leads them to set up surveillance around his house, over on West Acres Road in Joliet. It was around midnight when they got there.
It's pretty late.
Yeah, late at night.
They were watching his house for a while then, I take it.
Oh, yeah. For about 12 hours they were there. And finally, the deputies noticed something. They saw blood outside of Nance's house. That was enough for them to decide to go in.
Yeah.
And what they found inside was just awful. Romeo's mother, Tamika Nance, she was 47, and his uncle, 35-year-old William Esters II, they were both dead, shot to death.
Jeez.
It was a horrible, horrible scene. And it really started to make it clear that this was a much, much bigger tragedy than they initially thought.
Makes sense. You find something like that, your whole perspective's going to shift.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, once they found those bodies, the Will County Sheriff's Office got in touch with the Joliet Police Department.
Okay.
Because now they had to expand the investigation. They needed to look at other places that Nance might have gone.
Right. Makes sense.
So they went to this other house just down the street on the same block. And this house was where some of Nance's extended family lived.
Okay.
And what they found there, even worse.
Oh, no.
They found 5 more people dead, all from gunshot wounds. It was 37-year-old Christine Esters, 31-year-old Joshua Nance, 20-year-old Alexandria Nance, 14-year-old Angel Nance, and 16-year-old Alana Nance.
God. This is awful.
It's just heartbreaking. And the really disturbing part is that every single victim in that second house, plus his mother and uncle, they were all related to Nance.
Man, that just adds a whole other layer to this. I mean, this is a deeply personal thing, wasn't it?
I mean, it's impossible to imagine the pain involved here.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there. There's another guy that becomes really important in this whole thing, a guy named John Hansen.
Okay, I've heard that name.
Yeah, so you know how the police were interviewing people, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the end of January, they talked to John Hansen, and he told them something really important.
Okay.
He said that he had been with Nance during at least 2 of the shootings.
Oh, wow. So he was directly involved.
And it gets worse. Hansen said that Nance actually gave him a gun and told him to shoot one of the victims.
Oh, God.
I know, it's hard to believe, right? And then Hansen said that he threw that gun into the DuPage River.
So they had a witness of a sort placing him at the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what led the police to search the DuPage River.
Makes sense.
And guess what? They found a gun, a loaded black Springfield Armory XDS pistol.
Wow.
It was exactly like Hansen described, so, his story was checking out.
So after all this happened, what did Nance do? Where did he go?
He took off, he got in his car and drove all the way down to Texas.
All the way to Texas, huh?
Yeah, he was trying to get away. And there's this interesting detail. He actually stopped at a mall somewhere along the way and got himself some Texas license plates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he put them on his car. So it seems like he was trying to, throw the police off his trail.
Like he was trying to disappear.
Yeah, like he'd thought about it beforehand,
Right.
know, but, it didn't work.
I guess that.
The next day, around 8:30 p.m., U.S. Marshals found him in Natalia, Texas.
Okay.
And it all went down at a gas station right outside of town. They had this confrontation, and Nance ended up shooting himself.
Oh, wow.
So it was over, just like that. But, a lot of damage had already been done.
Yeah.
It's really important to remember here, going back to the victims for a second, that almost all of them were related to Nance in some way.
Right. You said that.
Yeah. The only ones who weren't were that 42-year-old guy who got shot in the leg and Toyosi Bakar.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And the police still think there was some kind of connection between them, right?
Yeah, they do, but they've never said publicly what it was.
Yeah, that's a big question mark hanging over this whole thing. Like, what was the link?
Exactly. But, we do have some information about Nance's past, like his criminal history.
Okay.
So back in 2018, he was charged with armed robbery. He used a knife.
Armed robbery, huh?
Yeah. And then in January 2023, so just a year before all this, he got arrested for shooting at another driver during a road rage incident.
Oh, wow. So there was a history of violence there.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't explain what happened on January 21st, but it does show that he had a pattern of aggressive behavior.
That's for sure.
And then there's a whole aftermath, right?
Yeah.
There were legal consequences for some of the people connected to Nance, like his girlfriend, Kylie Cleveland Singleton.
All right.
She was arrested and charged with felony obstruction of justice.
Obstruction. Interesting.
Yeah. And they put her on house arrest. She pleaded not guilty on February 9th, 2024.
Okay.
And then, remember John Hansen, the guy who was with Nance during the shootings? He was arrested, too, at the end of May 2024, and he's facing some really serious charges.
Like what?
3 counts of murder, attempted first-degree murder, and aggravated battery with a firearm.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, they're saying that he was right there with Nance during those shootings in Joliet and that he got rid of the Springfield Armory XDS.
Right.
So it'll be really interesting to see how all that plays out.
Definitely.
There's also some information about the guns that were used.
Okay.
So we talked about the Springfield Armory XDS, the 9mm, the one they found in the river.
Yeah.
Well, there was another gun, too, also a 9mm. But this one had aftermarket parts, like it had been customized.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was a Polymer 80 PFC9 compact frame with a live-free Armory LF19 Elite slide.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, so it seems like there are at least 2 guns involved in all this.
I see.
To really understand how bad this whole thing was, you have to look at the numbers. This was the deadliest mass shooting in the entire U.S. in 2024. And it was the deadliest in Illinois history.
Wow.
It was even worse than the shootings in Highland Park and Palatine. It's just a horrible, horrible thing to think about.
I mean, it really is. And, when you think about all the lives that were lost
Mm-hmm.
and how this ripped apart a family, it's just devastating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go back and recap everything we learned today.
Sure.
So on January 21st, 2024, this whole thing starts in Joliet with that shooting on Davis Street.
Right.
Then, just a little while later, Toyosi Bakari is found dead in Preston Heights.
Right.
And then it just gets so much worse when the police find all those other victims, all family member, at Nance's house and that other house down the street.
Yeah.
And then there's John Hanson, who admits to being there with Nance and getting rid of one of the
Yeah.
guns. Then Nance takes off to Texas, where he ends up killing himself during a standoff with the police.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure.
Definitely. And like we said at the beginning, we've just stuck to the facts here. We haven't speculated about anything. We've just tried to lay out what happened, when it happened, and who was involved.
And, I think it's important to leave people with something to think about.
Absolutely.
So thinking about everything we've talked about today, the timeline, the relationships, all of it, what really stands out to you? What questions are still swirling around in your head? Like, how could something like this happen in a community? How could it get this bad? What's your takeaway?
Those are really good questions. I mean, it's easy to get lost in the details, but it's so important to step back and think about the bigger picture. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Take care.